What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Web3 with a Splash of Wine podcast, where we talk about blockchain technology, DeFi, NFTs, and all kinds of other Web3 vibes. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and nothing said on the podcast should be taken as financial or legal advice. Let's dive into it. GM, everyone, and welcome to the Web3 with a Splash of Wine podcast. I'm your host Z, and today I have Winston from WeMeta, a prominent builder of the open metaverse. Hello, Winston. Welcome to
Hey,
the show.
thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Super excited to talk all about metaverse and virtual real estate today. Let's jump right into it. Could you start with a background of basically how do you made it into this crazy world of Web3, crypto, and the metaverse?
Yeah, happy to. So I guess we'll go back, and it ties in really, I guess, to a lot of what we met as building. Um, dropped out of college to do a real estate startup. Wanted to do buying and selling houses on your cell phone. I moved out to California, didn't know how to make an app, didn't know much about real estate. I'd just done a commercial real estate internship in the UK, and thought I understood how the world worked. So I kind of bounced around data some real estate for a number of years. And then it got to the point where it started up Coding Dojo's data science program. I had some friends who wanted me to get into Web3 startup, didn't really have any cash. And they had offered me a job actually at Near, or an opportunity to get a job at Near. And I'd already accepted this data science role. And essentially they needed somebody to come in and kind of save their program. And so I'm like, I already accepted this, don't want to walk away and rug pull these people. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll do this until it's stable, and then, I'll quit and get in. And that was something I wrote down before, is like, after I'm taking this job so that I have enough money to quit and do a startup. Went and lived in a shed in Las Vegas, so that I didn't have to pay California state taxes, and save a little bit of money. And then after, a couple cohorts, that program stabilized. Friends reached back out to me, and I'm like, this is the time. I quit my job, went snowboarding for a month, and then
Nice.
and then I did the Chainlink Spring 2021 hackathon, and then from there I just did a number of hackathons. I was trying to learn how to code smart contracts. I'm not a front end dev. I'm a back end / data science, data
Mhm.
engineer, and so I couldn't figure out the front end, and so I couldn't really get a job because
Mhm.
a lot of jobs in Web3 are dependent on knowing front end, at least technical jobs. And so, doing the hackathons, just going through different ideas, came across the team that I'm on. We met at Web3 Weekend last May. So that would have been May 2021, almost a year ago now. And like the original idea was just to build this like Zillow for the metaverse. And so I didn't really know what the metaverse was, figured it out. I went into Decentraland like the first day of the hackathon right before coding went, and I'm like, this is interesting. It's kind of trippy. And I've always wanted to have, like I said, that real estate app, really fast real
Mhm.
estate app, essentially, where you can get the best insights to find your land, understand, what's going on it. And that was something I really experienced when I moved out to California, was that I couldn't comprehend why a condo cost $700,000. Because
Yeah.
I'm coming from Arkansas, where $700,000 buys you, the four
The
bed
city
house.
hall.
Yeah, it buys you just about anything you want, frankly, in a nice gated community. And then you go out to San Francisco, and it's like you can have a dumpster underneath someone else's dumpster, underneath a skyscraper, behind Salesforce. And if you're lucky, it might be, in like so or um, so
They call
it's
this an incubator in San Francisco.
yeah. And so essentially this process of just figuring out what the hell was going on there. And then it's like, well, okay, let's just apply that to the metaverse. And so then I had already quit my job, and
Yeah.
so there kind of wasn't shit else I could do, frankly. And so we just kept diving in further and further.
How do you guys, I mean, it all sounds great, and I find it fascinating that you kind of come from like a traditional real estate background into Web3 and the metaverse, but you said May 2021, and back then there was barely any talk of the metaverse. I mean, NFTs, it was like JPEG summer. NFTs have picked up, and it was slowly transitioning into gaming, but no, like the term metaverse didn't exist really back then. And like, How did you guys come up with this idea, and how did you see this opportunity forming before everyone started talking about the metaverse, before Zuckerberg renaming Facebook and stuff like
Yeah,
that?
no, Zuckerberg renamed it. It would have been nice if he did it like a month earlier. It would have helped our round.
Yeah.
But essentially, I'll give you like an official answer and then an off the cuff. So like official answer, we saw a need in the market for these emerging technologies that we see as platforms, which are virtual land. And essentially on top of these platforms, you can build incredible experiences where you share life with other people. And we saw the opportunity to really try to understand these spaces and connect them and figure out, what the hell was going on. Unofficial answer, shrooms. And so that's how everything came about. But no, you were right. We were super super early. And it was
Yeah.
before even OpenSea had their metaverse thing, and so all we really saw was like, okay, there's four of these things that seem to be in this new category deemed metaverse. I think over the summer I read Snow Crash, and so that kind of connected it a little bit. And I'm like, okay, well, this metaverse thing has been coming about for a while. And then so that's where we stuck. But I mean, we had the name We Meta last May, so it's been a minute. I think we got really
Yeah.
lucky with timing, and we're just lucky. We have a really good team that understands what the market is about to be, and so we caught on, and we've just been riding the waves. So it's been really chill.
Awesome. Love it. And the term metaverse is a funny one because everyone uses it.
Mhm.
Most people don't really know what it means or can hardly define it. And to like a small number of people that understand it, it can mean a bunch of things. And what does metaverse mean to you, and how would you define it?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I'd say to me, metaverse is like this online. So well, I guess it could be offline to a certain extent. What does online offline mean anymore? Because we're always online, but um, like this space that's digital where you can share experiences, which really means share life, contextualize your environment with who are not necessarily in the same physical geographical location as you. Whether that's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, this podcast, what exactly it means is up in the air. Right now, we're working on the open metaverse, which is this decentralized NFT based thing, primarily on Ethereum, where you have different maps, different cities essentially that need to be built out, and we're trying to figure out how to build them out. And so that's where it's at right now. It's a space where you can share life with other people, and who don't have to be in the same location as you.
Yep. Love it. And I kind of share the same definition that I see the metaverse as the broader digital space and kind of like combination of apps, networks, and experiences.
Mhm.
Um, but there are people that would define a game like Decentraland as such as a metaverse, and there are
Right.
like many metaverses. So um, different views here, I guess.
To me,
Um,
Disneyland is just one city in the
yeah,
metaverse. So
I'm with that.
it's probably your New York. It's probably your New York of the metaverse. It could be London. We'll
Yep,
see.
nice, interesting.
I don't know how early we are, because like there was London before there was New York, and so it's like I don't know how early we are. The question is how early are we? I don't know.
Very.
Very, yeah, very. Well, then it's like, well, shit. What was before London? I
Yeah.
don't know, like Berlin or something. I don't know.
Um, let's dive straight into WeMeta because I love what you guys are doing there. Could you give, for those that live under a rock and are unfamiliar with WeMeta,
Oh, thank you.
what are you guys building over there? You mentioned Zillow for the metaverse, but
Yeah,
could you basically go deeper on that?
yeah. So the thesis we have really is that people right now, especially at scale, are having difficulty understanding what the metaverse is. Uh, you can see even Facebook with their commercials. They don't know what
Clueless.
they're.
Clueless.
Rather, they're like, huh? Okay, throw money at it and see if it works next time. Okay, throw some, maybe it'll work next. And then I think they're in this like 10-year cycle where they're just going to continue throwing money at different things.
Mhm.
And then they're working on the technologies that make it very easy to experience digital life. And they're hoping that those technologies power the thing. And they might be right, who knows? But I think, you know, what we're working on is really a platform for understanding. That's always been what we're working on. The initial way we wanted to tackle it was this Zillow for the metaverse, just where you could compare the land and maybe the different maps and perhaps some foot traffic data and other data, so like points of interest, and trying to figure out how to value the land as well. And so the data has always been a big part for us, but as we've zoomed in more and more on the data, because we're really a data-driven company, we've discovered, not only do people need to be able to compare the worlds, they need to be able to compare what they're building inside of the worlds. So people don't know what to build, they don't know why to build it, they don't know if it's successful. Frankly, well, really, most people, how many people are visiting their land. And so what we're really building is like this dashboard where you can compare, your properties to each other, and you can kind of just see the analytics on them. So you can see how many people visited you today, how long they stayed, what they were into, where they were spending their time throughout the metaverse. Who your users are is a huge question we're trying to answer. And then like where does that tie into like social data, like Twitter data? How does that look for like the sentiment of people, how people are talking about you? If you threw an event, was it popular on Twitter and did that draw people in, or was it not? And then is your crowd the same crowd as somebody else's, or is it entirely unique? Is it the same people revisiting over and over? Kind of like a Google Analytics provides this understanding of like what's actually going on in your land. We still have this Zillow for the metaverse. We also have leaderboards. We also have analytics as well. So we're showing the different comparisons between the different worlds from like a trading standpoint. But essentially, we just want to be this comprehensive platform where people go to understand their land. There's a good company, Placer AI. It would be probably our most direct comparison for a real life company.
Mhm.
They're somewhat similar to Zillow, where you can compare different properties, but they actually track all of our cell phones. And so they do it anonymously. Well, just in the US, I would say. I don't know if they go outside the US. And so they do it anonymously, and then they don't take any personal data. They just do the location, and so they can kind of figure out where you live, where you work, and then well, I mean everybody works where they live now, but they overlay census data essentially to understand who's doing what, and so that's kind of what we do for the metaverse.
Awesome. I love it, and I genuinely look forward to all of this playing out because
Yeah.
right now you've just, I mean, what's live on your platform is barely scratching the surface of what you've described. So genuinely looking forward to see how this playing out, and
It'll be really cool when, Decentraland can come and look at our dashboard and understand what's going on. And like even Decentraland themselves doesn't fully understand what's going on in Decentraland.
yep, I agree.
And so
And
we're trying to build a platform where they can understand what's going on, and then all these bigger brands, everybody else who's trying to get in as well, can understand, their small section of Decentraland,
yep.
and then how it compares to other sections, and then expand from there to the entire metaverse is the vision.
And I guess when that plays out, we'll have a better answer to the question of how much does location matter in these games and stuff like that. Because right now nobody really knows, unless you like sandbox and you want to be as near as possible to Snoop Dogg.
Yeah,
But apart from that, like,
that's been
it's
my entire life is I need to
yeah.
be dog.
Um, how similar do you think virtual real estate and real world real estate are, I mean, not sure if real world is the actual case, but let's say traditional real estate.
Yeah.
How similar do you think those are as assets and as basically, um, I guess, trends and analytics looking at both? What similarities and what difference do you see in those two?
Yeah, so I would say right now the capital that's being deployed in these worlds, the top four worlds, Decentraland, Sandbox, Somnium Space, Crypto Voxels, um, is real estate capital. It's people who are looking to build these more experiences that we recognize. Like we helped with the New Year's Eve ball drop in Times Square over New Year's Eve. We did like a ETH Denver event. We did Fashion Week.
Mhm.
These are all things that you can see in real life. It's like, like events, i.e. Ball Drop, conferences, i.e. Denver, and then fashion shopping, Fashion Week. Also, that's kind of an event as well. And so, these are like real things that we see in real life playing out inside of the metaverse. And so right now, I think they're quite similar. I think the people who are looking to deploy capital and build in the space are coming from this traditional real estate angle. I don't think that's always going to be the case. Seeing like this huge wave of interest right now. And then if you think about it like conceptually, those people are used to, if you're a really good commercial real estate investor, perhaps you're getting, 7 to 10% return plus, inflation per
Yep.
year. And so you're getting, decent cash flows, but it's nothing compared to buying, a sandbox last summer at $400 and now it's
Yep.
worth 14 grand, right? And so they're seeing those returns and they're like, holy shit. And then I think brands are coming in and they're like, oh my God, we're paying $1 million a month to rent out this space. Or we're paying, $1 million a month to maintain our website. We could go into Decentraland, rent something from you guys, from Landworks, and then, pay a tiny fraction of it, build out
Yep.
this experience, and who knows what the sales volume is. And so I think they're looking at that. I think brands are starting to look at that. They see it as good advertising, promotional experience. And you see, like it's really culture, and it has a good opportunity to drive culture and drive in these NFTs. Bored apes aren't necessarily all going to go meet up in some city, but they can certainly meet up in Decentraland,
Yep.
right? And so then if you have a Nike store right there, perhaps, Bored Apes is Supreme. Bored Apes Nike collab inside of Decentraland. Very easy, very straightforward. Doesn't cost anybody. It's I want to say it's free, but it's like a freeing experience. There's less restrictions, and so I think trend wise, the digital real estate has slowly gone up in value and then sort of sustained it. Whereas you see a lot of other, like NFTs, most of them stay at zero and then sometimes they pop off. Some pop off from the very beginning, like Azuki's or whatever. Like Doodles had popped off kind of forever. Meebits, they went up to a good floor essentially and they've kind of held it. Bored Ape, CryptoPunks were kind of sitting around for a little while and then they ended up popping off to
Yep.
skyrocket. But you haven't seen something that's like slowly kind of goes up over time and then holds it. And that's what virtual land seems to do. So I'd say trend wise, it's similar to real estate in that way. And then the things that are being deployed right now, built, I should say, are quite similar, but I don't think they always will be. I think it'll go much more towards games and gaming environments. I think you'll see something like Fall Guys, maybe in Somnium Space or Decentraland or whatever, or Among Us. These types of games will play out inside of these virtual worlds, and they have nothing to do with real estate, right?
Yep. And are you seeing, you mentioned the growth in terms of the value of those lands. Are you seeing, based on what you guys are looking at in terms of analytics, are you seeing the same growth trajectory for users and people that are actually spending time in those games?
Yeah, actually we are. So, I mean, Decentraland, I think they grew 15x last year. And they do that every year. It's going to get quite popular quite fast. And I
Yep.
think they're growing at a faster rate this year. So, I mean, we've been measuring their concurrence for a while. I mean, when we first measured their concurrent players way back in the hackathon, it was like a couple hundred at
Yep.
most, and most. Now there's not really a single moment in time throughout the entire 24-day cycle where at least it's not 3,500, if not 4,000 people playing every single second, which, daily active users wise, that could mean 100K, multiple, maybe even more. I haven't looked at that in quite a while, but I mean, I know their daily active users grew 15x from like the summer, and it was mostly from the summer to December of last year. So if you put that into like a annualized thing, you're looking, quite hefty, 30,
Yep.
50x, 30, 50x per year. It's going to blow off, and that's just Decentraland. And
Yep.
so I think as these worlds, like NFT worlds has done a really good job of making something that's easy to use, easy to conceptualize. We'll see how long they stick around. Because I mean, compared to Decentraland, it's a baby project, but they're doing quite well right now, and it's very easy for them to onboard users. And so we'll see how it goes. But as multiple worlds are able to onboard users exponentially more quickly, I think you're just going to see a skyrocket. And so
Yep.
that's what the trend appears to be right now. Users are probably growing faster than land prices.
Interesting. And let's dive deeper on the games then. So, from I mean, all of those games are still early stage, and some of them are still in development, like Sandbox, for example. Of those, obviously, Decentraland has probably the biggest community right now, just because the game is playable for the longest time, and there are more events and experiences there.
Mhm.
From those games that are currently around, which ones do you see sticking around, and which ones do you are basically most bullish on to basically attract users and investors?
Yeah, investors, that's complicated because there's a
Yep.
lot of really talented people coming into the space. Like Build a Rocket Boy is led by the guy who used to do Rockstar Games. And so it's a really talented Web2 creator coming into the space. And so
Mhm.
if I was an investor, I'd deploy capital there. I hopefully am an
Yep.
investor one day. Right now, I've been rugged too many times. And so the excess capital is questionable. But I'd say if you wanted to get into the space right now, and as far as users go, I think the way to think about it is who am I bullish on for users, not necessarily price, because that's not
Yeah.
necessarily something I worry about on a day-to-day basis, because I'm confident
Sure.
if people are using the product, there'll be value there. The more people you can get to care about the product and actually get
Yep.
involved, long term, it should play out well. And so I'd say users wise, I'm really bullish on Decentraland, very incredibly bullish on Decentraland. Crypto Voxels has been doing a lot of reworking of
Mhm.
their city, if you will,
Yep.
or of their world is one way I say it. But I think city much more contextualizes it much better. And so I know they expanded to 90,000 parcels recently. We'll see how that plays out over time as they build new
Mhm.
experiences. But I think, CryptoVoxes, I'm pretty bullish on. Somnium Space is waiting essentially, in my opinion, for Meta to release a good version of the Oculus Quest or Meta Quest as they now call it,
Mhm.
they're really tied to VR. And so if VR doesn't take off, they might be in a tough spot. But Super World is also pretty popular with AR, and so I think as AR grows, Super World could also pop off. But really, as far as like direct use now, primarily Decentraland. We'll see
And
what Sandbox does when they release.
what do you think of those contrasting approaches of, let's say, Decentraland and Sandbox?
Mhm.
What strikes me in terms of how do they approach everything is, for example, um, Decentraland was like, and I'm oversimplifying it here, but here's the game, here are the building tools, this is decentralized, create whatever you want, you guys run this place, and you see like people creating different stuff, and then later the brands coming in at a much later point, while
Oh no, you froze.
brands and with experiences that those brands are providing, they're kind of taking the partnerships route rather than the community first grassroots route of Decentraland.
Yeah, and so you froze for me. I'm not sure if my camera's frozen, but hopefully you can hear me.
Yep, all
Um,
good.
Cool. And so I'd say, Decentraland, I really like how the approach has gone. I think, it's made people bearish on the game, but, as long as you can actually build, the game continues to get better. I'd say people haven't really, other than the fact that the game isn't live, unless you had critiques of their alpha recently. Now you can critique their alpha, but other than that, it's been difficult to critique the sandbox play experience.
Yep.
You couldn't say the game sucks because the game isn't out. Decentraland, people have been trashing it for a hot minute, right?
Yep.
But it's slowly getting better, and it's slowly. And so the question is like, do you believe in the community to build the product? I do, and I think that Decentraland's really done an excellent job of that, and I really respect their approach. It's a slow approach. It's a huge bet. It's risky,
Hmm.
But I think it's really going to pay off long term. And if you think about it, when from a brand standpoint, it's been easier for brands to get in with the sandbox because there's just not much going on. I mean, I'm sure underneath the surface there's a whole lot going on.
Yep.
I'm sure that it's going to be excellent when it releases, hopefully. Um, but the for Decentraland, it's they're coming now because it's a place they can build live and they can actually deploy something and it works. And so brands are looking at that and going, okay, perhaps I think frankly they should do both. I think they should do multiple. As they say, they see these things as different cities. You don't necessarily pick New York or London. You do both. And so I think that's where brands should go. But if they're looking for that live experience right now, it's Decentraland. And so I think that's going to be a huge advantage for them. And I think the reason for that is Decentraland has been live. I don't think it's necessarily, if Decentraland took the other approach, we'd see what would happen. But I think the correct approach is what Decentraland took.
Yep, I agree. And I also love and I'm always going to be a proponent of the community first approach.
Hmm.
Um, One last question compared to those particular games. Do you see, I mean, you've described them as cities. Do you think that those cities are going to look the same way at their pinnacle? Or, I mean, are we at the pinnacle of virtual world games? Because I'm, don't get me wrong, I spent time in all of these games and I'm building infrastructure around all of these games. But I grew up playing games like Assassin's Creed and Crisis and Far Cry, and those games kind of like pushed the envelope in basically what would be described as graphics and visual content. And obviously, there is processing power, and well, a lot of these virtual worlds are web based.
Right.
Do you see those games evolving in terms of graphics and like engines over time, or do you think that we're going to keep them simple and fun and kind of edgy, just so they're more accessible to the widest of audiences?
Hmm. I think right now Decentraland could use a lot of work on their engine to make it easier for people who, don't have the highest quality computer, but that's kind of the case for a lot of them. I mean, if you look at
Yep,
Somnium Space right now, if you really want to get involved in Somnium Space, you need some quite expensive gear. It's probably going to cost
correct.
you as much as your land. And so if you can't really buy land, it's hard to get involved in Somnium Space. And so I think that's, kneecapped them to a certain extent. I think Decentraland has, the visuals haven't always been fantastic, but they're slowly getting better, and I would imagine over time they'll continue to get better. I mean, it's like if you look at Fortnite when it first released, right? Fortnite Battle Royale specifically, the compared to what there are now were trash. They were absolutely just garbage. It was a
Correct.
fantastic game, and the fundamentals were there, and I think that's where Decentraland is probably at.
Hmm.
Perhaps, sometime this summer or later this year, Decentraland will be at that, initial Fortnite level. I think they're still struggling to get there. They really need to work on their server support, like being able to support more players, having, better experiences that render a little bit better. But, visuals that have been not the best are how a lot of games are released. I mean, I don't know how many people listening, play, say, like Assassin's Creed is just it's hard. It's difficult. It's not a fair comparison to
For sure.
compare these games just because like Assassin's Creed is just like, okay, how do we make something absolutely excellent?
Yep.
And that's what Assassin's Creed is known for. They make something absolutely just excellent, and it's just a fantastic game. It's beautiful, and they push it every single time. But there's a large teams working on those things for multiple years. If you look
Yep.
at something, I mean, even when Call of Duty also released their battle royale, when they did Blackout, the visuals were much worse than they are now. And so I think the visuals will continue to improve with the community first approach. We have to figure out how exactly that works. Who leads that?
Yep.
Does anyone lead it? I don't know. What does the governance look like? That's a complicated question. How do people get grants? How do they get funding? How do they get
Yep.
rewarded for actually putting their time and effort into making these things beautiful and making them work? Those are the things we're still figuring out. We're on the cusp of it, and I think we're quite close. There's a lot of metaverse infrastructure that still needs to be built, a
For
whole lot.
sure.
And I don't even think most people are thinking about what is the metaverse infrastructure, right? I think most people don't even realize like what's missing. I mean, myself included, most likely, and I'd say myself for certain actually.
Yeah.
And so it's like I don't even know what needs to be built, and I'm involved in the space. It's my entire life,
Yeah.
and so it's going to take time. It's going to take a little bit of luck, a little bit of serendipity. But I would imagine, yeah, the visuals will get better, the game experience will get better, everything will get better over time. And so that's why I think Decentraland's approach is quite excellent, really, if you think
Yeah.
about it, because they're incentivizing people to contribute long term. And as that happens, people can see the progress and they can see it actually happen. And then, one day people can be nostalgic about it. Like, hey, remember when Decentraland looked like this, right?
Yep.
And when that happens, that's when we'll say,
Yep. No, for sure. And I guess it also comes down to empowering creators because let's say even if Decentraland came out off the bat with like an Assassin's Creed type of engine,
Mhm.
like how many creators are there in Web3 and I mean even outside of Web3 that can create this kind of content visually in terms of scenes and everything,
Right, right.
much less.
Yeah, it's so much less. It's so much less. Yeah, I didn't even think about it from that level. Yeah, it really does empower creators quite well. And we're kind of at this where we're at the fashion stage, of
Mhm.
whatever. I don't know where the fashion stage is in this whole schema. I'm sure somebody
Yep.
has some theories about it, and it's like, what percentage to Assassin's Creed are we? Are we 20% there? Are we 80% there? Who
Yep.
knows? I mean, I'm sure you could debate it all day and then go back and forth, but. I think the ultimate thing is we are headed in that way, and really it's a good onboarding platform as it is right now. It's quite difficult already to build into
Mhm.
Decentraland. So
Oh, for sure.
it's if they did an Assassin's Creed, it would frankly be impossible, right? And
Yep.
so as is, anybody with some technical chops or really just the desire to figure it out can go figure it out. But if it's Assassin's Creed, the barrier for entry is exponentially higher. That's a really good point.
Yep. And if we touch back on the land narrative, all of these games that we mentioned and all of these games that you guys at Remeta and us at Landworks and EnterDAO, at
Hmm.
least in Landworks, building around, they basically revolve around the narrative of scarce digital land. So they provide the game, but they're finite plots of land in the game. Uh, and this so far looks to be working well. But on the other hand, there's like a certain community of games and players that kind of, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, they're kind of calling this a cash grab and they believe that land should be, I mean, there's obviously real estate outside, like you can't make obviously there are people that are trying to get us to other planets, but there is a
Right.
certain amount of land and real estate that could be sold, but there's no reason to be so, at least this is the second narrative. There's no reason to be so in the metaverse, and we can create as much digital land as we want. What do you think about this second narrative of basically infinite digital land, and how do you see this space evolving going forward?
Yeah, I think, so it kind of goes back to the city narrative I have, where there's different cities that have different
Hmm.
rules. And some of them, they define their boundaries. I do find it very interesting that we're defining the boundaries first before building the cities. I would say, playing devil's advocate, that's quite a conceptually interesting approach. It's like, okay, New York has decided that it is within these 100 square miles, or it's within these
And
100.
there's no buildings yet.
Right, and there's no buildings, there's not shit yet. And so it's like that's a fascinating approach. But then like from a design standpoint, you're like, okay, well, these are the barriers. Um, I can then, put together a city from there. And so that also makes it quite interesting. When you go into the infinite, how does it all tie together? Is my question.
Mm.
And then that raises the question: does it need to tie together? That's something that'll trip you out for a while. And then it was like, okay, what does it mean to tie together? And does that mean you're jumping from city to city, or does it mean you're jumping within the same city, or does it mean you're jumping everywhere? I think the reason that whether or not it's scarce, that digital land will be valuable, is because there's only can pay to certain things. I'd say YouTube is a fantastic example of this. 90% of YouTube videos get zero views, right? Maybe the another 5% get a couple hundred. Top 5% maybe get thousands. Top 1% is getting in the millions. Top 0.0000 is getting in the billions, right? And that just doesn't. That's going to be the same way that land plays out, and that's value, right? And so it's where does the value go? And so I'd say really what having scarce digital land enables is it puts pressure on the creator or the owner or whoever has that control or influence over the land to create a compelling experience. It's like, okay, here's something that's just yours and only X people can get it. Make it valuable, and that's kind of what NFT communities are to a certain extent. And
Yep.
so it puts forward this opportunity for the community to go, hey, here's something that just you have. If you make it excellent, you'll get rewarded quite well. Unlimited land doesn't really do that as well. I'd say certainly, we provide analytics on both, but it's to me, I think scarce digital land is most likely a correct approach because it's going to happen either way. You can't pay infinite attention to things.
Yep. No, I agree with your view, and basically, even if it's infinite, there's going to be 1% of it that matters, and the fight or like the attention and the value will accrue to this 1%. So I guess it all ties together and makes sense.
Hmm.
One last question, so I'm conscious of your time and we don't keep this for too long. It's a bit more general one. I guess it would be a good wrap up to the episode. Obviously, the whole metaverse thing was kind of formed in the last 12 months, or not even 12 months, or at least the metaverse narrative that metaverse is
Right.
the future, the next big digital space, etc., etc. Where do you see the so-called metaverse space in 5 years, and what's your vision of it in 5 years?
Hmm. I think, Decentraland Decentraland might be built out. I would hope that Decentraland is built out. I'd hope, Sandbox is built out. I'd hope Somnium Space is built out. I hope CryptoVoxes is built out because these things are being developed quite quickly. I think there'll still be iterations. I mean, cities in real life are constantly being renovated, innovated. There's empty blocks everywhere. I think people forget about that. There's places I'm in Brooklyn right now. There's a place down the street where there's not even a building. It's just an empty lot, right? This is New York. We've been here for a hot minute, and there's still areas that are not developed. But I think, 5 years from now, those areas will be quite developed. I think it'll be something you go to for shopping, for events. I think there'll be, sports in the metaverse. I think there'll be esports in the metaverse. I think there'll be games in the metaverse where you play games. I think there'll be shopping, like for groceries, for food. I think you can go there and have a meal. I think in 5 years you'll be able to go to Times Square in Decentraland, sit down, order Uber Eats, it delivers to your door. You get the Uber Eats with your door. You're on a date with your girlfriend who's actually in London or Tokyo or something, and you're sitting in LA or New York. You both have Uber Eats. You're sharing some sort of experience. You're watching something, say Times Square ball drop. From there, maybe you go play a mini game or something like that, or you go shopping. You're looking at clothes. You're walking to the store. You're watching a movie, perhaps. Maybe you go watch a movie in the metaverse. And so I think, all these experiences will be built out within 5 years. And I think the lead cities, if you will, is what we're calling them now, right? The cities, the different cities in the metaverse will be established, and then there's going to be a lot of exciting games that release soon. Unreal Engine, Unity. I think Unreal is really going to push the space forward quite a bit, and so we'll see what
Yep.
comes out of there. But I wouldn't expect it to look like Decentraland. I expect it to look quite sexy, frankly.
Yep.
And that'll just improve with time. But I think, the initial the initial cities will be built out, and so that's where I think we are in 5 years. And I think it'll be much hotter than it is now. I think it'll be much bigger than it is now. Um, and I'm hoping that we're there providing the analytics for the whole thing.
Amen. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Amen. Amazing. I love it. I think it was a great one. Thanks for jumping on the show. Tell the people where they can find We Met. Are you guys obviously on Discord, Twitter?
Yeah.
Um,
You can do discord.gg/WeMeta. You can also on Twitter where We Meta tweets. WeMeta.world is the website. Um, Past that, yeah, I mean that's kind of everything. But We Meta World Analytics.WeMeta.world. That's where you can find data on all these things that are going on. And hopefully maybe soon on IntraDAO or somewhere.
yep.
otherwise. So we'll see what, hint, hint, wink, wink, but we'll see what comes out there. So I'm really excited. Thanks so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the questions. Always nice seeing you, obviously, and great catching up.
Likewise. Yep, I know. We'll catch up on the next We Met at Twitter Spaces.
Yes, yes.
All right. Thank you, Winston. I
Thank you.
appreciate you jumping on.